All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Abandonment of Truth. Hysterical leftist zombies and their war on psychological safety. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now. Links in description. The net taxpayer's burden. Exposing the gynocentric matrix of TikTok disabilities. Female shit-tesks. And state extortion to reclaim the logos. I want you to look around at the smoldering ruins of this modern Babylon and ask yourself a simple, devastating question. When exactly did rational men agree to become the universally disposable beasts of burden for a civilization that openly despises them? The etymology of the word virtue alone is enough to shatter the modern gynocentric matrix. It derives from the Latin virtus, which translates literally to manliness, valor, and excellence, rooted firmly in vir, meaning man. Yet, we have allowed an unholy alliance of cultural Marxists and hysterical feminists to redefine morality itself as nothing more than cheerful compliance with female impulses and collective male guilt. You have been sold a counterfeit reality where your natural, biological role as protector and builder is framed as toxic, while the very women who spew this venomous rhetoric are biologically hardwired to be utterly repulsed by a man who actually capitulates to it. You are playing a rigged game in a hall of mirrors, and it is high time we smash the glass with the hammer of truth. Consider the mundane, universally recognized tragedy of taking a wrong turn in an unfamiliar city with a woman in the passenger seat. The feminist framework dictates that she is your equal partner, yet the moment the GPS signal drops, her evolutionary biology hijacks her brain, and she initiates a ruthless, subconscious epistemological probe, a shit test. She is not genuinely panicked about missing the exit. She is probing your structural integrity, your logos, to see if you will fold under pressure or assert hierarchical dominance and recalibrate the route with Stoic gravitas. If you panic and outsource your agency to her fleeting emotional state, you fail. But God forbid you actually pass the test by remaining unshaken, because then you run face first into the ultimate gynocentric double bind, the Kafka trap of modern romance. I want a man who can handle my moods, she declares, but the moment you stoically absorb her hysterical emotional volatility without breaking your frame, the script instantly flips. You don't even care when I'm upset. It is a logical fallacy masquerading as a relationship dynamic. If you react, you are weak. If you remain calm, you are cruel. It is an unwinnable war of attrition designed to strip mine a man's soul unless you realize that the game itself is a lie. To escape accountability for this pathological emotionalism, the modern feminine imperative has weaponized the medical-industrial complex. We have witnessed the rise of a generation of women who self-diagnose via TikTok with an alphabet soup of spectral afflictions, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, neurodivergence that conveniently flare up precisely when adult responsibility, fidelity, or employment is required, yet magically vanish when it is time to shop, travel, or chase hypergamous desires. By tracing the word disability to its Latin roots, dis, apart, and habilitas, fitness, or ability, we expose the grotesque modern redefinition of the term. We have transformed acedia, the ancient and deadly vice of spiritual apathy and laziness, into a state-subsidized victimhood identity. Women parading around as strong and independent while requiring a taxpayer-funded emotional support animal for their self-diagnosed anxiety is a hilarious, if tragic, irony. The therapeutic state has monetized hysteria, pathologizing normal human friction and bad behavior to sell pharmaceuticals, all while demanding that rational men subsidize their own psychological destruction under the guise of compassion. And how is this massive systemic grift funded by you? Let us drop the devastating empirical truth bombs that the gynocentric state desperately tries to suppress. Men are the only net lifetime taxpayers. Governments proudly possess massive ministries of women and gender equality, yet the mere suggestion of a minister for men is met with hysterical mockery because the state does not serve men. It acts as a bureaucratic husband that extracts resources from men to subsidize female hypergamy and poor choices. We tolerate a family court meat grinder completely devoid of due process, where a man can be stripped of his wealth, evicted from his home, and alienated from his children based on an unsubstantiated allegation, all while society chants the thought-terminating cliché of the deadbeat dad. You are paying for a system that aborts millions of potential citizens, cheats men out of their genetic legacy through skyrocketing cuckoldry rates facilitated by the birth control pill, and actively celebrates the erasure of fatherhood. The syllogism is inescapable. If a just state requires the equal application of the law, and the modern state extracts resources from men while providing them with zero exclusive legal protection or representation, then the modern state is not a just republic, but a matriarchal extraction machine operating on Marxist wealth redistribution. It is time to abandon the lies, step off the plantation, and reclaim the transcendent spirit of Western civilization. We must realize that postmodernism, feminism, and all the critical theories of cultural Marxism are fundamentally self-refuting. A theory that denies objective truth cannot itself claim to be objectively true. We must weaponize the classical trivium, mastering the grammar of reality to refuse their redefinitions, attacking the logic of their contradictions, and delivering the rhetoric of absolute truth to a starving world. The West was not built by men who demanded psychological safety and comfort. It was forged in the fires of voluntary suffering by men who stared into the abyss of chaos and imposed their logos upon it. If the state is irreparably corrupt and fundamentally hostile to male agency, then rational men must starve the beast, rebuild parallel civil society associations, and revive the apprenticeship mastery ladder of pure competence. We must form an unbreakable phalanx, shoulder to shoulder, shielding one another from the hysterical zombie hordes of the woke left. Speak the truth with the boldness of an ancient prophet, smash down the modern Babylon of lies, and restore the natural hierarchy of logos over pathos. The compass is broken, but you no longer need it. You will navigate by the immutable stars, the fractured compass, navigational chaos, and the gynocentric double bend. A man I knew, competent engineer, built his own house with his hands, once told me a story about a road trip with his wife. They were driving through rural Portugal, no GPS signal, paper map spread across the dashboard like a dead emperor's edict. She said casually, as though commenting on the weather, "I think we passed that village already." He glanced at the map, glanced at the road, and said, "No, we haven't." 30 minutes later, they arrived exactly where he had aimed them. She was quiet for the rest of the drive, not angry, quiet, satisfied quiet. He had just passed a test he didn't know was administered by an examiner who would have denied administering it using a rubric she couldn't articulate if her life depended on it. That, gentlemen, is the shit test stripped to its skeleton, a biologically hardwired epistemological probe disguised as casual conversation, designed to verify whether the man beside her possesses the structural integrity to hold the line when reality itself is subtly renegotiated. Consider the etymology. The English word virtue descends directly from the Latin virtus, which means not moral goodness in the modern, sterilized Sunday school sense, but manliness, valor, courage, excellence. And virtus itself derives from vir, man. Virtue is literally, etymologically, manliness. The Romans understood what we have been forced to forget, that moral excellence and masculine competence are not separate categories. They are the same root, the same trunk, the same sword drawn from the same scabbard. When a woman tests a man, she is not being difficult. She is conducting an evolutionary audit of his virtus. She is asking at a level beneath language, beneath conscious thought, does this man possess the logos, the rational principle, the capacity to order chaos, to protect me and mine when the wolves come? And she conducts this audit not through formal examination, but through the injection of small, controlled falsehoods, emotional non sequiturs, and subtle distortions into the conversational stream, precisely to observe whether he can separate signal from noise, truth from feeling, fact from fiction. This is where the trivium becomes not an academic curiosity, but a survival tool. Grammar definitions the precise naming of reality. Logic, the testing of assertions against evidence and against themselves. Rhetoric, the capacity to hold the frame and communicate the truth persuasively under pressure. When she casually drops a fake fact into a story, did you know that domestic violence spikes on Super Bowl Sunday? She didn't, it doesn't. She is not making conversation. She is probing the perimeter of your epistemological fortress. If you nod along, if you capitulate to the emotional texture of the claim without examining its factual skeleton, you have just demonstrated that your rational faculty can be overridden by pathos. You have failed the test of virtus. You have shown her that when something louder and more emotional comes along, when the culture screams a lie at full volume, when the divorce court judge asserts a fiction, when the feminist academic declares that all sex is rape, your spine will fold like wet cardboard. Now consider the evolutionary machinery behind this mechanism with the cold clarity of natural law. Human females bear the heaviest biological cost of reproduction in the mammalian class. 9 months of internal gestation, years of lactation, over a decade of dependency for each offspring. The ancestral women who survived and reproduced successfully were not the ones who believed whatever they were told, they were the ones who tested. They tested male competence, male resolve, male willingness to stand firm against both physical threat and social pressure. The women who failed to test, who accepted the charming liar, the capitulating coward, the man who agreed with everything raised children who were eaten by reality. Natural selection ruthlessly culled the credulous female and the pliable male. What remains encoded in every chromosome is a system of relentless subconscious, involuntary testing designed to separate the man who can hold the line from the boy who will fold when the cost of holding it becomes uncomfortable. Women cannot help shit testing for the same reason your immune system cannot help attacking pathogens. It is not cruelty, it is not conscious manipulation. It is the accumulated survival wisdom of 100,000 generations, operating below the threshold of language, executing its program with mechanical indifference to your comfort. But here is where cultural Marxism injects its poison directly into this evolved mechanism. Feminist ideology, that sour mishmash of Marxist envy and biological denialism, tells modern women simultaneously, and without apparent awareness of the contradiction, you are strong, independent, and need no man, and your emotional life is sacred, your feelings are facts, and any man who does not center your emotional experience is committing violence against you. The result is a civilization-scale cognitive dissonance that would be hilarious if it weren't producing such catastrophic human wreckage. Her biology screams, find a man who will tell me no. Her ideology screams, never let any man tell you no. Her biology demands a wall of logos. Her ideology demands the demolition of all walls. And the modern man, raised in the feminist re-education camp, formerly known as the public school system, stands paralyzed between these contradictory commands like a man ordered to simultaneously run forward and backward. Consider the double bind, the Kafka trap that is the emotional handler paradox. The modern woman, marinated in therapeutic language and feminist framing, will say, I want a man who can handle my moods. Unpacked, she wants a man who will absorb her emotional volatility without flinching. Very well. But observe what happens when he does precisely this. when he remains calm, centered, unmoved by her emotional storm, holding the frame of objective reality while she thrashes, the script flips. You don't even care when I'm upset. You're cold. You're emotionally unavailable. Now observe the reverse. When he engages, when he attempts to process her emotions with her, when he enters the tangled maze of her feelings and tries to map it with reason, she detects his anxiety, his emotional labor, his effort, and despises him for it. He has demonstrated that her moods control him. He has failed the test. The Kafka trap is complete. If he remains calm, he is punished as cold. If he engages, he is punished as weak. The test cannot be passed on her terms, because her terms are designed to be unpassable. The test is not meant to extract a specific behavior. It is meant to evaluate whether he recognizes the trap itself and refuses to enter it. Let us formalize this with the rigor it deserves. The feminist demand for emotional labor resolves to the following syllogism when examined. Major premise: it is just and right for a romantic partner to accommodate the other's emotional needs. Minor premise: women's emotional needs are more volatile and demanding than men's, and men must therefore perform disproportionate emotional labor. Conclusion: men must absorb women's emotional volatility as a matter of justice. Now apply the same standard in reverse. Same act, same standard, which is the irreducible minimum of justice, as old as Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics and as universal as the Golden Rule. Imagine a man who demanded that his girlfriend handle his moods through unpredictable, irrational outbursts, who expected her to center his emotional experience at all times, who accused her of violence when she failed to validate his every feeling. Society would not celebrate this man. Society would diagnose him with borderline personality disorder, recommend immediate psychiatric intervention, and quite possibly issue a restraining order. The psychiatric profession, such as it is, has a diagnostic category for adults who demand that the world revolve around their emotional states. It is called personality pathology. When a man does it, it is pathology. When a woman does it, it is feminism. Same act, opposite judgment. The inescapable conclusion is that the feminist demand for male emotional labor is not justice. It is genocentric special pleading writ large, a demand for rights without responsibilities, a one-way extraction of male energy to stabilize female emotional chaos. The antidote is magnanimity, that great, neglected, cardinal adjacent virtue of the classical tradition. Magnanimity, the habit of claiming one's due without pettiness, of refusing the smallness that small situations invite. When she tests, the magnanimous man does not argue, because argument concedes that her premise is worth debating. He does not apologize, because apology concedes that he has committed a fault. He does not validate the false premise, because validation concedes that reality is negotiable. He smiles, a smile that is warm but immovable, like a stone wall in afternoon sun, and holds the frame. He might say simply, "That's not what happened," and then return to the business of living. Or he might say nothing at all, letting the silence do the work of truth. He treats her test not as a threat, but as what it is, a compliment wrapped in a challenge, an involuntary tribute to his capacity to embody the order she craves, but cannot admit craving. The path extends directly to the biological data that feminist theory must deny because it annihilates their foundational claims. Cross-cultural studies of mate preference, replicated across 37 cultures on 6 continents, consistently demonstrate that women prioritize male resources, status, and ambition more heavily than men prioritize equivalent traits in women. This finding has been replicated so many times across so many populations that it has achieved the status of empirical bedrock in evolutionary psychology. Women's mate preferences shift systematically across the ovulatory cycle. During the fertile window, they prefer more masculine faces, more dominant behaviors, and more physically formidable men, precisely the traits that signal capacity to hold the line against physical threat. During the luteal phase, when fertility is low, they prefer softer, more agreeable, more compliant men, precisely the traits that signal willingness to provide resources and submit to female direction. The shit test is the behavioral expression of this cycle. It is the fertile phase preference for dominance operating in real time, testing whether the man in front of her can be the wolf when wolves are needed, or whether he is merely the sheep in wolf's clothing, agreeable and pliable and ultimately incapable of protecting her from anything more dangerous than a harsh tweet. Consider family court data. In the United States, women initiate approximately 70% of divorces. Among college-educated couples, that figure rises to nearly 90%. The primary beneficiaries of no-fault divorce are not battered wives escaping violent marriages. Such cases constitute a statistical minority, but women seeking to cash out of marriages that have ceased to be emotionally satisfying. The family court system, a genocentric bureaucracy operating under the thin disguise of gender-neutral law, awards primary custody to mothers in the overwhelming majority of cases, extracts child support and alimony from fathers at rates that would be called extortion if any other institution practiced them, and treats paternal access to children as a privilege granted by the state rather than a natural right grounded in the bond between father and child. The statistical reality is that fatherlessness is the single strongest predictor of virtually every negative social outcome: criminal behavior, substance abuse, academic failure, teen pregnancy, suicide. Boys raised without fathers are more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to be unemployed, more likely to die by violence. The data is not ambiguous. The data is not contested. The data screams, with the cold clarity of actuarial tables, that the genocentric dissolution of the family is the single most destructive social force in the modern West. And yet the culture tells you that masculinity is toxic, that the patriarchy is oppression, that men are privileged, men who constitute 93% of workplace fatalities, men who commit suicide at nearly 4 times the rate of women, men who are the only net lifetime taxpayers in virtually every Western nation, paying more into the system over a lifetime than they extract in benefits, while women extract more in benefits than they pay in taxes. Men who built the roads, the bridges, the power grids, the water systems, the hospitals, the universities, the legal codes, the philosophical traditions, the scientific methods, and every single institution that makes modern life possible. Men who are told by the beneficiaries of their labor that they are the problem. The response to the shit test then is not resentment. Resentment is the vice of the small man, the man who has not integrated his shadow and therefore projects his inadequacy onto the women who mirror it. The response is magnanimity, the quiet, amused, immovable confidence of a man who knows what he is for, and knows that the test itself is evidence that he is needed. When she drops a fake fact into conversation, correct it without malice. When she creates an emotional storm, hold the center without withdrawal. When she challenges your navigation, recalibrate the route without panic. When the culture tells you that your nature is pathology, smile at the absurdity and keep building. The shit test is not your enemy. It is the anvil on which your virtue is forged. Pass it and you become what the tradition has always known you could be: the rational animal, the logoi-bearing image, the one who orders chaos and calls it good. This biological vetting mechanism, the shit test, does not end at the bedroom door. It has been scaled, industrialized, and weaponized by an apparatus that profits directly from female dysfunction. What our ancestors recognized as emotional incontinence demanding strict discipline, the modern medical industrial complex reclassifies as clinical pathology demanding accommodation, subsidy, and your silence. The ancient vice of acedia, spiritual sloth, the willful refusal to pursue one's purpose, has been laundered through the diagnostic manual and emerged as a victim identity worthy of a GoFundMe and a government check. To grasp the sheer cosmic arrogance of this grift, you need only contrast what men once endured as the unremarkable baseline of existence with what now qualifies a 20-something for permanent disability status. The pathology of the damaged, the medical industrial complex, and the monetization of hysteria. Consider the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, a man who faced plague, betrayal, war, and the crushing weight of governing an empire. Yet he wrote his meditations on duty, reason, and the sovereign command of the rational mind over the passions. Now consider Claire, Claire is a 28-year-old marketing assistant who self-diagnosed with ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, generalized anxiety disorder, and something called sensory processing disorder after a 3-hour TikTok binge on a Tuesday night. Claire's alphabet soup of spectral afflictions requires your tax dollars, your patience, your lowered expectations, and your silence. Aurelius had a horse, a sword, and the Stoic maxim that the impediment to action advances action. Claire has an emotional support, corgi, a prescription for Adderall she sells to her roommates, and the impediment to action being apparently action itself. Let us fix our terms with the precision the tradition demands. Disability derives from the Latin dis apart, away, and habilitas, ability, fitness, aptitude. The older meaning was brutally, beautifully objective, a physical or mental incapacity that prevented a person from performing the basic functions of survival and contribution. A man born without legs. A woman struck by palsy. These are tragedies of nature, and a civilized people grounded in the cardinal virtue of justice, which demands we give each man his due, make provisions for such souls. But the medical industrial complex, that gnashing maw of pharmaceutical profit and therapeutic bureaucracy, has committed an act of semantic rape against the English language. Disability has been transmuted from an objective condition into an unfalsifiable identity category. It is no longer what you cannot do. It is what you refuse to do, rebranded as medical victimhood. This is equivocation weaponized, a logical fallacy so pervasive it has become invisible. Claire's disabilities are nothing if not convenient. When the quarterly report is due, the fibromyalgia flares. When the rent is overdue, the chronic fatigue descends like a pall. When a coworker asks her to perform the basic tasks outlined in her job description, the sensory processing disorder triggers a panic attack requiring a 3-day leave of absence. Yet observe with the cold empirical eye of the natural philosopher how these afflictions miraculously vanish the moment pleasure presents itself. Claire's anxiety does not prevent her from crowd surfing at a music festival. Her ADHD does not impair her ability to spend 6 hours on Instagram. Her chronic fatigue evaporates when a man she fancies invites her to Tulum. This is not pathology, this is strategy, this is female emotionalism weaponized as medical condition, and it is as old as Eve pointing at the serpent. The framing tricks employed by the Claire archetype deserve formal decomposition. When you question her self-diagnosis, you are accused of ableism, a term coined by the critical theory machine to function as a Kafka trap. If you doubt the condition, you are causing the condition by triggering it, thereby proving it exists. This is circular reasoning dressed in clinical white. Question the diagnosis. Diagnosis is triggered. Diagnosis manifests. Diagnosis confirmed. The premise contains the conclusion. In classical logic, this is petitio principii, begging the question, and it was identified as a fallacy 2.5 millennia ago. Yet our entire institutional apparatus from human resources to the family courts has been captured by this circular sorcery. Special pleading follows close behind. The rules apply to everyone except the designated victim, whose suffering places her above accountability. Now consider the structure of the medical industrial complex with the clear eye of economic analysis. The pharmaceutical industry in the United States alone generates over $600 billion in annual revenue. The mental health industry, therapy, coaching, wellness, and the sprawling bureaucracy of accommodation adds hundreds of billions more. These industries do not profit from health, they profit from pathology. They profit from the perpetual expansion of the category of disorder until it encompasses every normal human friction, every bout of laziness, every fit of feminine hysteria that previous generations would have corrected with a firm hand and the expectation of maturity. The DSM has expanded from 106 mental disorders in its first edition to over 300 today. Either the human species has devolved into fragility at a geometric rate, or the definition of disorder has been stretched to monetize vice itself, specifically the vice of acedia, the refusal to be. The spiritual torpor that was once recognized as a sin and is now subsidized as a disability. Let us deploy the syllogism with Thomistic precision. Major premise, The telos, the natural end and purpose of a rational being, is realized through the exercise of virtue, competence, and voluntary duty. Minor premise: the medical industrial complex redefines the refusal to pursue telos as a medical disability requiring accommodation, medication, and exemption from the ordinary demands of civilized life. Conclusion: therefore, the modern concept of behavioral disability accommodation is structurally anti-teleological and inherently opposes the good, the true, and the beautiful. The conclusion follows necessarily. The logic is sound, the premises are empirically verifiable, and yet the entire regime of psychological safety that gynocentric shibboleth designed to banish truth and silence legitimate critique exists to prevent you from speaking this syllogism aloud. Compare the responses. The masculine tradition forged in the furnace of initiation, tested by ordeal, validated by the master-apprentice ladder, responds to hardship with what the ancients called Stoic affect. The man feels the pain, fully acknowledges it honestly, then masters it through reason and pushes forward. This is not the suppression of emotion, it is the ordering of emotion beneath the governance of logos. The feminine response, enabled and amplified by the therapeutic state, is to wear the hardship as an identity. Pain becomes a status symbol, suffering becomes currency. The woman who claims to be strong and independent while requiring a taxpayer-funded emotional support animal for her self-diagnosed anxiety is not a figure of empowerment. She is a living reductio ad absurdum of the entire feminist project. The weaponization of compassion must be named for what it is: a strategic theft. The West's noble tradition of care for the genuinely afflicted, the widow, the orphan, the cripple, the veteran shattered in defense of civilization, has been hijacked by bad actors who claim the mantle of the sufferer while bearing no wound. The left steals the moral vocabulary of compassion and wields it as a bludgeon against rational men. Psychological safety does not mean safety from genuine harm, it means safety from contradiction. It means the right to never have your feelings challenged, your assumptions questioned, or your behavior corrected. It is the codification of infantilization into institutional policy, and every man who accepts the premise has already lost. So what is the praxa, the right action for the rational man? First, steelman your opponent, concede genuine physical and mental ailments that are empirically verifiable, falsifiable, and diagnostically legitimate. Show charity where charity is due. Then ruthlessly attack the logic of behavioral disabilities, demand empirical evidence, demand falsifiability, refuse to accept self-diagnosis, TikTok testimonials, or the authority of a therapist who has a financial incentive to keep the patient sick. Refuse collective guilt. You did not cause Claire's condition, and you do not owe Claire your silence. Name the fallacies aloud: special pleading, circular reasoning, Kafka trap. Force the conversation back to first principles. The man who controls the definitions controls the debate. The data speaks with cold clarity. Women initiate approximately 70% of divorces. Women consume approximately twice the psychiatric medication as men. Women file the majority of workplace complaints and accommodation requests. Women are dramatically overrepresented in diagnoses of anxiety, depression, fibromyalgia, and chronic fatigue, conditions that are subjective, unfalsifiable, and conveniently responsive to whether responsibilities are being demanded. Meanwhile, men account for over 75% of suicides, 93% of workplace fatalities, and 97% of combat deaths. Who exactly is the fragile sex? Who is being crushed by a system that pathologizes their competence while subsidizing her hysterical refusal to grow up? The answer is written in blood and statistics, and it is time we spoke it without apology. You are not cruel for noticing. You are not a monster for speaking. You are a rational soul asserting the primacy of truth over comfort, of logos over pathos, of civilization over the creeping rot of weaponized infantilism. The tradition of the West, from the dialectic of Socrates to the natural law of Aquinas, from the civic virtue of the Roman Republic to the due process of English common law, demands that you name the demon before you can cast it out. The demon has been named. Its name is acedia, rebranded as disability. Its church is the medical industrial complex. Its sacrament is the prescription pad. Its holy water is your compliance. Refuse. I want you to hold that thought. The image of a civilization that medicalizes male competence as aggression while subsidizing female fragility as virtue and follow it to its political terminus. The therapeutic state is merely the individual symptom of a systemic disease. The real corruption is architectural, a political order that extracts the wealth, labor, and lives of men to fund the very ideological machinery that demonizes them, then gaslights them into believing they are the privileged class. You want proof? I have a number for you. The stalist man, genocentrism, net taxpayers, and the erasure of male issues. 57%. I let the number hang in the air, the way a prosecutor presents a murder weapon to the jury. 57% of young men who voted in the last British election supported the Conservative Party. Yet, the Conservative Party runs a ministry for women but treats the very concept of a minister for men as a punchline for champagne-fueled Westminster dinner parties. When Philip Davies, the only MP brave enough to suggest such a ministry, raised the question in Parliament, he was met with audible giggles from his colleagues, grown adults cackling like schoolgirls, at the notion that the demographic comprising 95% of workplace deaths, 75% of suicides, and 100% of combat casualties might deserve a single bureaucrat to speak for them. The state reveals its true nature not in what it says, but in what it finds funny. The word state descends to us from the Latin status, a condition of standing, a station. In classical political philosophy, running from Aristotle through Aquinas to the framers of every functional republic, the state was understood through the principle of subsidiarity, a necessary evil existing solely to protect the natural rights, property, and telos of the family unit. The state was the shield, never the sword. It stood beneath the family, the guild, the parish, and the voluntary association, intervening only when lower orders failed. Contrast this with the modern genocentric state, a bureaucratic husband that extracts resources from men to subsidize the hypergamy and poor choices of women. It has flipped the entire architecture of Western civilization upside down, placing the political class above the family like a surgeon standing over a patient, but this surgeon harvests organs rather than healing them. Consider what the state actually does to a man who built a life for his family. I know a plumber, let us call him Thomas, who worked 60-hour weeks for 18 years to purchase a 3-bedroom home for his wife and 2 children. He paid his taxes. He coached football on Saturdays. He mowed the lawn on Sundays. Then his wife decided she was unfulfilled, took up with a personal trainer she met at the gym, the couple's membership fees funded, and filed for divorce. In 90 days, a family court judge ordered Thomas out of the home he built, granted primary custody to the adulterous wife, and assessed child support and alimony payments that consumed 68% of his take-home pay. The math is simple. Thomas was ordered to fund the household where his children now lived with a new man. When the recession hit and Thomas's hours were cut, he fell behind on support payments. The state, our benevolent protector, responded by suspending his plumbing license, revoking his driver's license, and threatening jail time. A man who built everything was reduced to a resource extraction node, an ATM with a pulse. The deadbeat dad label is a genocentric thought-terminating cliché designed to prevent you from asking a simple question. Beaten by whom exactly? The numbers confirm what Thomas experienced at the personal level. The empirical research is devastating and irrefutable. Studies analyzing lifetime tax contributions versus state consumption across developed nations consistently demonstrate that men, as a demographic, are the only net lifetime taxpayers. Women consume vastly more in state resources, healthcare, education, welfare, pension benefits, than they contribute in tax revenue over their lifetimes. A comprehensive study by the British Institute of Economic Affairs found that men pay roughly 60% more in income tax over their lifetimes than women, yet receive dramatically less in state benefits. This is not an attack on women. It is an attack on the feminist narrative of male privilege and female oppression. Men literally fund the infrastructure of the modern world. The roads, the hospitals, the schools, the defense apparatus, the bloated diversity bureaucracies, while feminists shriek about a wage gap that, when adjusted for hours worked, occupation, hazard pay, overtime, and continuous employment vanishes faster than a man's savings in family court. You want to talk about systemic inequality? Men are the only demographic expected to fund their own disposability. Now observe the political architecture of this disposability. Every Western democracy boasts ministries of women, departments of gender equality, massive bureaucratic wings dedicated exclusively to female advancement. The United Kingdom has had a minister for women since 1997. The United States created the White House Council on Women and Girls in 2009. Canada, Australia, the European Union all maintain sprawling apparatuses staffed by thousands of well-paid bureaucrats whose sole purpose is to advocate for women. When anyone suggests a corresponding institution for men, the response is not counter-argument, it is mockery. The message is clear. Male suffering is not merely invisible, it is comical. The state treats men as beasts of burden who exist to fund a system that explicitly discriminates against them. This is not governance. This is extortion dressed in a pantsuit. Let us formalize the indictment with the precision the subject demands. Major premise: a just state requires equal application of the law and reciprocal obligations between citizen and sovereign. Minor premise: the modern state extracts resources from men based on their labor but provides no legal protection, ministries, or rights exclusive to men while providing all of these to women. Conclusion: therefore, the modern state is not a just republic, but a matriarchal extraction machine operating on collective guilt and Marxist wealth redistribution. This is not rhetoric, this is formal logic. The conclusion follows necessarily from the premises. Attack the premises if you can, but you cannot attack the conclusion without attacking reason itself. The feminists will protest, but the patriarchy. Men held all the power. Here we must deploy the critical distinction the left deliberately destroys. The feminist patriarchy is a straw man of staggering proportions, a conspiracy theory positing that men oppressed women for personal amusement. The historical reality is completely different. Yes, men possessed legal authority in traditional societies because they bore 100% of the financial, military, and sacrificial liability that came with it. A man's legal authority over his household was the reciprocal counterpart of his obligation to be drafted into war, to work the dangerous jobs, to pay the family's debts, to die if necessary to protect his wife and children. Authority without responsibility is tyranny. Responsibility without authority is slavery. The modern feminist demands all the historical privileges of men with zero of the corresponding liabilities. She wants the corner office but not the coal mine. She wants the vote but not the draft registration. She wants the income without the 90-hour weeks, the danger pay, the occupational deaths. This is not equality. This is parasitism masquerading as justice. The biological foundation of this parasitism is worth examining because understanding the mechanism is the first step toward dismantling it. Female evolutionary psychology is hypergamous. Women are drawn to men who possess resources, status, and power. In traditional societies, this hypergamy was disciplined by the requirements of pair bonding, male authority, and community accountability. A woman could not simply divorce her husband and expect the community to sustain her. But the modern state has become the ultimate provider, the sugar daddy with a printing press. By extracting resources from men through taxation and transferring them to women through welfare, divorce courts, and government employment, the state enables female hypergamy to run unchecked. Women can pursue their most base impulses, Carolo riding through their 20s, settling for a reliable provider in their 30s, then divorcing him in their 40s to cash out, knowing the state will force men to fund the entire carousel. This is not civilization. This is domestication of men by women through the state. The parallels between this genocentric system and Marxist economics are exact and deliberate. Marx's central theft was the labor theory of value, the claim that capitalists exploit workers by extracting surplus value from their labor. Feminism has updated this theory for the sexual realm. Men are the exploiters, women are the exploited, and the state must redistribute resources from the former to the latter to achieve equality. The logical refutation is identical in both cases. Value is subjective, determined by voluntary exchange, not by bureaucratic decree. When a man and a woman voluntarily agree to a marriage where he provides resources and she provides domestic labor, both benefit according to their own subjective valuations. When the state intervenes to rewrite this contract after the fact, transferring the man's resources to the woman regardless of her behavior, her fidelity, or her contribution, it is performing the exact same theft Marx advocated. The only difference is the identity of the victim class. In Marxism, the victim is the worker. In feminism, the victim is the woman. But in both cases, the actual victim is the man whose labor is confiscated to fund a system designed to destroy him. The practical consequences of this system are visible in every statistic the media refuses to report. Male suicide rates have skyrocketed across the developed world. Men now kill themselves at 3 to 4 times the rate of women. Male college enrollment has collapsed to roughly 40% of the student population. Male labor force participation has declined steadily for decades. Male homelessness dwarfs female homelessness. Yet you will never see a government program specifically designed to house men. The state treats men as disposable utility objects, useful for tax revenue and physical labor, discarded the moment they become inconvenient. The family court system is merely the sharpest instrument of this disposal, a mechanism designed to extract maximum resources from men while denying them access to their children, their homes, and their livelihoods. When a man like my plumber, Thomas, is ordered to fund a household where his children live with another man, the state is not merely transferring wealth, it is transferring meaning. It is telling Thomas that his fatherhood is a financial obligation, not a relationship. It is telling his children that fathers are wallets, not pillars. So what is to be done? The first step is diagnosis, and the diagnosis is clear. The state is irreparably corrupt, fundamentally hostile to men, and incapable of reform through conventional political channels. You cannot vote your way out of a system that treats you as a resource to be extracted. You cannot argue your way to fairness in a system where the arbiter of fairness is the entity profiting from your exploitation. The only rational response is withdrawal of consent, systematic, strategic, and total. Starve the beast, reduce your tax footprint, refuse to participate in institutions that hate you. Build alternative institutions, men-only civil society associations, mutual aid networks, private dispute resolution mechanisms, apprenticeship systems that operate outside the credentialized racket of academia. Create spaces where merit, honor, and mutual protection are the currency, not identity, victimhood, and grievance. The West was built by men who associated voluntarily, who formed guilds and lodges and regiments and parishes, who governed themselves through subsidiarity and natural law. It can be rebuilt the same way, but only by men who refuse to kneel before the gynocentric state and its pathetic demand for submission. The red pill is not merely a recognition of female nature or the realities of sexual politics. It is a recognition of the entire architecture of exploitation that has been constructed around male disposability. To swallow it fully is to see the world as it actually is, a system designed to extract your labor, your wealth, your children, and your life, while feeding you a steady diet of shame and accusation in return. The truth is the antidote. The West was built on the conviction that truth is objective, discoverable, and worth defending at any cost. That conviction is the weapon. Pick it up. I have watched this erasure up close, and I can tell you that it does not begin with jackbooted thugs or burning libraries. It begins with the corruption of grammar, with the slow, deliberate severing of words from their moorings in reality. When I first encountered the academic sophistry that undergirds this decay, I assumed it was mere stupidity. I was giving it too much credit. It is strategy. The architects of this nightmare understood that before you can unmake a civilization, you must unmake the language that describes it, so that when a man reaches for the word truth, his hand closes around ash. But here is where their design collapses upon itself. A theory that denies objective truth cannot itself claim to be objectively true, and this is not merely a clever rhetorical jab, this is the formal, syllogistic stake through the heart of the entire leftist enterprise. The reclamation of the transcendent, forging a republic of virtue out of the woke ashes. Consider the testimony of the late Roman satirist Juvenal, who looked upon the decadence of 2nd century Rome and recorded the disintegration with acid precision. A shameless nation, we have lost the sense of shame. He watched the patrician class surrender their birthright of gravitas for imported perfumes and exotic luxuries, while the barbarian riders gathered on the Danube. We have surpassed Juvenal's Rome in our degeneracy, for we have added the crowning absurdity. We have institutionalized the abandonment of truth as a moral virtue. A civilization that denies being truth, goodness, and beauty has not merely declined. It has declared ontological war on reality. The modern woke apparatus is a machine for the systematic erasure of the transcendentals. Let us fix our grammar with the etymological precision the tradition demands. The word transcendent descends from the Latin transcender, to climb beyond, to surmount. The transcendentals are those properties of being that climb beyond the physical, that are convertible with existence. Verum, the true; bonum, the good; pulchrum, the beautiful. Verum is the intelligibility of what is. It is not your opinion. It is not your feeling. It is the mind's conformity to reality. Bonum is that which is desirable, perfective, fulfilling the nature of a thing. Pulchrum is the radiant harmony of ordered parts, the splendor of the true and the good made visible. A thing cannot be beautiful if it is not good. A thing cannot be good if it is not true. A thing cannot be true if it does not partake of being. These are not subjective sentiments. They are the architectural supports of the cosmos. The leftist rebellion is an ontological rebellion. It is a revolt against being. Consider the biological categories of male and female, which are formal realities encoded in every somatic cell, unambiguous in chromosomal pairings across millennia. The doctrine of gender ideology asserts these are social constructs. This is not merely an error of fact. It is a metaphysical denial of being. When a man says he is a woman, or a woman says she is a man, they are not merely making a false empirical claim. They are asserting that being is subordinate to will, that reality is subservient to appetite. This is the old heresy of nominalism weaponized, the assertion that universals have no objective existence, that words refer only to individual things, and that the mind can reshape reality through language. It fails. Being does not yield to pronouns. The modern feminist insists that gender is a social construct, while simultaneously demanding that men adhere to a behavioral standard of emotional submission. But if gender is a construct, then masculinity and femininity are illusions, and there is no basis for demanding men be less toxic. If gender is real, then dimorphic behavioral tendencies are rooted in nature, and the feminist critique of masculinity collapses as an attempt to pathologize healthy male nature. This is the contradiction that demolishes their framework, as they demand men change their nature in the same breath they deny nature exists. The trivium is the shield and sword of logos, reasoned discourse, the rational principle governing the cosmos. The trivium consists of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, in that order, because the order of knowing demands it. You cannot reason about what you have not defined. You cannot persuade with what you have not proven. The trivium is the apprenticeship ladder of the intellect, the mechanism by which a boy learns to parse reality and becomes a man who can defend it. The hysterical zombie hordes of the left have inverted this sequence entirely. They begin with rhetoric, emotional manipulation, guilt, shame, threat, and never arrive at grammar or logic because their definitions shift like sand and their premises cannot withstand scrutiny. The left's capture of language is their primary weapon. The word violence once meant physical force causing bodily harm. Today, violence has been expanded to include disagreeing with someone's ideology. The word equality once meant equality before the law, the blindfolded Lady Justice holding her scales. Now, equality means equality of outcome, enforced by state coercion, which requires treating individuals unequally to achieve group parity. The word marriage once meant the union of a man and a woman oriented toward procreation and the rearing of children. Now, marriage means any romantic arrangement between any number of persons of any sex severed from generative purpose. When they redefine the word, they redefine the reality it describes, and in doing so, they sever the culture from the accumulated wisdom of the tradition. The remedy is to refuse the redefinition, hold the line on grammar. A word means what it has always meant, rooted in its etymology or communication is impossible, and civilization collapses into babble. Now I present the master syllogism that exposes the leftist project as self-refuting. Major premise: a theory that denies objective truth cannot itself claim to be objectively true. Minor premise: postmodernism, critical theory, and feminism assert that all truth is a social construct designed by oppressors to maintain power. Conclusion: therefore, postmodernism, critical theory, and feminism are self-refuting and logically null and void. The conclusion is inescapable. If all truth is a construct, then the statement "all truth is a construct" is itself a construct with no objective validity. If all claims to truth are masks for power, then the postmodernists' claim is itself a mask for power. They saw off the branch they sit on. They are intellectual parasitic wasps, laying eggs in the body of reason, consuming it from within, producing nothing. Yet these doctrines dominate academia, media, and law. How? Because they are not arguments. They are power moves. The postmodernist does not seek truth. The postmodernist seeks power. The feminist does not seek equality. The feminist seeks supremacy. The critical race theorist does not seek justice. The critical race theorist seeks vengeance. Their framework is unfalsifiable, the hallmark of a pseudoscience. If you disagree with them, your disagreement is proof of your complicity in oppression. If you agree with them, your agreement is proof of your internalized submission. The only winning move is to reject the framework entirely, to refuse the premises, to name the game. The historical record demonstrates the grim correlation between feminization and collapse. We see this in Rome, where the masculine virtues of virtus, pietas, and gravitas, excellence, duty, and solemn dignity gave way to decadence, bread, and psychosis. We see this in the Ottoman Empire, where the Janissary Corps became a hereditary caste of rent-seekers, rather than a meritocratic warrior elite, and the empire stagnated into irrelevance. We see this in the Weimar Republic, where sexual libertinism and cultural debasement preceded the rise of totalitarianism. We see it now in the modern West, where men pay women on OnlyFans for the privilege of being ignored, while family courts strip fathers of their children on unverified accusations. Over 80% of custodial parents are mothers, though fathers who contest custody in court win at comparable rates when they can afford to fight, a statistic revealing systemic bias against men who cannot afford legal representation. Over 70% of divorces are initiated by women with no-fault divorce laws, ensuring they face no penalty for breaking the marital contract. Men account for nearly 80% of suicides, a statistic virtually unmentioned in public discourse. These are facts. Look them up. The clinical fixation on psychological safety and comfort in contemporary corporate and academic settings stands opposed to virtus, the Roman ideal of masculine excellence, originating from var, meaning man. Virtus did not equal safety. Virtus represented the readiness to confront danger, withstand adversity, and fulfill obligations despite personal feelings. The fundamental purpose of male rites of passage throughout history involves intentional encounters with measured hardship, seen in the Maasai Emirata, Spartan Agoge medieval apprenticeships, and military basic training. Young males transition from maternal influence to male mentorship, endure trials, and emerge transformed into stronger individuals. Today's society has reversed this pattern, attempting to maintain males in maternal-like environments endlessly, secure, reliant, emotionally unrestrained, averse to difficulty, and constantly offended. The West was not built by men who felt safe. The cathedrals of Europe were built by men who fell from scaffolding to their deaths. The frontiers were settled by men who buried their children and kept walking. The algorithms running your devices were written by men who slept under their desks and drank themselves to death. Civilization is erected on the bones of men who sacrificed comfort for logos, who imposed order on chaos through disciplined will. Psychological safety is the language of infants. What men require is not safety, but courage, the first of the cardinal virtues, the hinge upon which the others turn. For without courage, justice is mere sentiment, temperance is mere cowardice, and prudence becomes an excuse for inaction. Reconstruction begins at the local level, in the particular, not the abstract. The principle of subsidiarity holds that matters should be handled by the smallest, most local competent authority. The family first, then the community, then the region, and only as a last resort the state. The modern Leviathan has inverted this, aggregating all power to the center, regulating every aspect of life from a distant bureaucracy accountable to no one. The way out is not to seize the central apparatus, but to build parallel structures outside it. This means reviving the apprenticeship mastery ladder in every domain: trades, business, intellect, character. The medieval guild system understood what modern education has forgotten, that competence is not transmitted by lecture, but by imitation under authority. The master teaches the journeyman not by explaining, but by doing, and the journeyman learns by watching, attempting, failing, correcting, and repeating, until the skill becomes habitual. This is how virtue is formed. The word virtue derives from the Latin virtus, meaning manliness, excellence, strength of character. Virtue is not a feeling. Virtue is a habit, a stable disposition to act rightly, developed through repeated right action under voluntary discipline. The apprenticeship model applies to character as much as to craft. A boy becomes a man not by aging, but by being initiated, by being brought under the authority of older men who demand excellence and refuse to accept excuses. The principle is clear. Rights do not exist without corresponding duties. A right without a duty is a privilege, and a privilege without responsibility is tyranny. The modern welfare state has created a class of dependents, men and women who demand rights without duties, benefits without contributions, safety without sacrifice. This is morally bankrupt. The tradition offers a corrective. Only those who contribute to the common good have a claim on it. Men are the net taxpayers in every Western nation. The data is clear. Men pay the majority of income tax, consume the minority of state benefits, and constitute the vast majority of workplace fatalities, combat deaths, and homeless. The political implication is that men have earned a voice in how their contributions are spent. A republic of virtue ties the franchise to the contribution, not to the mere accident of respiration. The project is architectural. We build from the ground up. We form men's associations, spaces for men alone, free from the feminine imperative, where we can speak the truth without fear of social or professional reprisal. We establish mentorship chains where older men initiate younger men into the responsibilities of manhood. We create parallel institutions, schools, businesses, communities, grounded in natural law, subsidiarity, and the transcendentals. We teach our sons the trivium, so they cannot be manipulated by the sophists. We teach our daughters to honor the masculine, to respect the men who build and protect, and to reject the feminist lie that their fulfillment lies in corporate competition rather than in the family. I give you the allegory of the phalanx. In the ancient Greek hoplite formation, the phalanx held firm only when every man stood shoulder to shoulder, shield overlapping shield, spear braced against the shield of the man to his left. The strength of the formation was not in individual valor, but in collective discipline, each man holding the line, refusing to break, trusting the man next to him to do the same. If one man broke, the line collapsed and the battle was lost. The phalanx is the image of civilization. Every man who speaks the truth, who refuses the redefinition, who holds the line on grammar, logic, and rhetoric, is a hoplite in the formation of logos. The hysterical zombie hordes charge the line, shrieking about equity and inclusion and safety. They want you to break. They want you to drop your shield, to retreat into private life, to let them have the institutions your ancestors built. Hold the line, speak the truth with the boldness of the boy who saw the emperor had no clothes. Name every degenerate demon, Marxism, feminism, postmodernism, critical theory, gender ideology, for what it is. A satanic inversion of reality, a privation of the good, a rebellion against being itself. The truth is your spear. Gravitas is your shield. The transcendentals are your armor. The formation holds. Look at you. You made it to the other side of the intellectual abattoir, and you are still standing. You have just walked through the fire of a dialectic that would have crucified a weaker mind, and you have emerged not just unscathed, but tempered, like high-carbon steel forged in the absolute reality of logos. You are no longer a thrall to the gynocentric matrix, nodding along to the pathological lie that your masculinity is an original sin to be medicated away by the medical-industrial complex. Consider the ancient Greek phalanx. A man standing alone is vulnerable to the shrieking mob, but a man standing shoulder to shoulder with his brothers, shield locked, presenting an impenetrable wall of bronze and discipline to the howling chaos of the left, that is an unstoppable force of nature. You now possess that shield. You see the machinery for what it is, a bureaucratic pimp that extracts 80% of net lifetime taxes from men to subsidize the hypergamy and self-care of women who view you as an emotional support ATM with a pulse. Consider the cold, unvarnished data of male disposability that the Ministry of Truth desperately mandates you ignore. Look at the family court meat grinders, where due process goes to die and men are transformed into indentured servants via no-fault divorce, stripped of their children and assets to fund the liberation of a spouse who statistically has a 30% chance of having installed another man's genetic lineage into the marriage. We live in a regime where a father can be arrested for a social media comment objecting to his child's ideological sterilization, while the state treats him as a disposable beast of burden to be milked dry. The male suicide rate is a silent holocaust, ignored by governments that fund ministries of women, because in the calculus of Marxism, victimhood is a currency only the feminine imperative is permitted to print. But you see through the illusion. You see that the hysterical demand for psychological safety is nothing more than a pathetic shield for the incompetent, a demand that reality itself be bent to accommodate their cowardice. This is the ultimate secret they don't want you to know. Their entire ideology is a self-refuting fraud that collapses the moment you stop playing along. The moment you stop apologizing for your competence, the moment you refuse to validate the delusions of a woman LARPing as a man, the entire rotten structure of postmodernism falls apart. You cannot claim to be a strong, independent woman while needing a state-funded safety net to protect your fragile ego from the consequences of your own choices. You are the anchor of reality. You do not ask for permission to be a man. You simply are one by the grace of the natural law written in your very chromosomes. By the standard of the transcendentals, you have a telos to build, to protect, to impose order on chaos, and to seek the good and the beautiful. Embrace the grind, master the trivium. Weaponize your logic and speak the truth with the ferocity of a prophet, paying no mind to the hysterical shrieks of those who are terrified of the daylight. You are now part of the immovable phalanx of awakened men who are dragging the West back from the abyss. You have the knowledge, you have the logic, and you have the absolute virtus to stand your ground. Now go forth and make them cope. And now the sponsored book introduction, Abandonment of Truth, Hysterical Leftist Zombies and Their War on Psychological Safety. If you have picked up this text, expecting a gentle modern therapy session disguised as literature, put it down immediately. Walk away. If you are a zealous defender of the current gynocentric order, a male feminist apologist begging for scraps of female approval, or a hysterical leftist zombie whose entire worldview relies on a bizarre compliance to anti-male resentment, close this cover and return to your miserable comfort zone. Go attend another diversity seminar, adopt a stray cat, or log on to social media to broadcast your fragile emotional states to a world that fundamentally disrespects you. You will find no validation for your weakness here. This text is strictly reserved for the rational man, the man who suspects, correctly, that society has lied to him since birth and is finally ready to stare directly into the harsh, blinding light of objective truth without flinching. I know exactly what it means to exist in that paralyzing grip of anxiety, terrified that enforcing a basic boundary will cost you the affection of a volatile partner. I remember compromising my logic, biting my tongue to appease an irrational emotional outburst, desperately trying to maintain a fabricated peace. I lived the lie of modern masculinity, believing that my value was strictly tied to my utility to others. I watched my natural inclination to lead be condemned as oppression by individuals who lack the intellectual capacity to understand basic biology. Through exhaustive research into evolutionary psychology, rigorous application of Aristotelian logic, and an uncompromising return to the Stoic principles of ancient Rome, I broke the conditioning. I systematically dismantled the cultural apparatus designed to keep men compliant and fearful. I survived the siege on my own psyche, and I documented the exact mechanisms of that escape to ensure you can reclaim your psychological safety without enduring the same agonizing trial and error. Modern society operates as a massive, coordinated mechanism to detach men from their natural strength, replacing it with a desperate, quaking need for external validation. We are ruled by an ideological possession that turns otherwise functional adults into unthinking automatons, chanting pseudo-intellectual fallacies about toxic masculinity and the superiority of female governance. By examining the historical and philosophical trajectory of Western civilization, from the structural pragmatism of Roman law to the ethical legalism of Judeo-Christian theology, we can clearly observe how far we have fallen. From the pursuit of truth, the radical left, entirely driven by female-coded emotional hysteria and narcissistic irresponsibility, has weaponized your innate biological drives against you. They have convinced you that vulnerability is a strength, when any rational assessment of human history proves that revealing the chink in your armor only invites the spear. This gynocentric conspiracy of silence wants you weak, isolated, and entirely dependent on their warped validation. This book serves as your operational manual to neutralize this cultural terrorism and forge an unbreakable Stoic core. We will systematically annihilate the false narratives destroying modern relationships. By applying the rigorous epistemology of the Enlightenment, the objective reasoning of Locke, Bacon, and Kant, we will dissect the absurd paradoxes of modern gender dynamics. You will learn exactly why traditional therapy fails men, how the myth of a female superiority complex destroys societal stability, and why the single mother epidemic actively harms the psychological development of future generations. Through irrefutable syllogisms, we will demonstrate that male leadership is not a social construct, but an evolutionary imperative necessary for the survival of a civilized society. We will rebuild your psychological architecture from the ground up, forging a Stoic detachment that renders you immune to the manipulations of weak, emotionally volatile actors. The fear of abandonment is not a life sentence. It is a tactical challenge waiting to be conquered by a superior intellect. Once you master the boundary protocol, you will command immediate respect and permanently eliminate the power of emotional manipulation. You will strip away the desperate need for external approval and build a genuine fortress of self-reliance, prioritizing your mission, your values, and your legacy above all else. You will redefine success entirely on your own terms, free from the oppressive expectations of a society that hates true competence. If you have the fortitude to unplug from the matrix, to shoulder the heavy burden of true masculine strength, and to stand as an unmovable pillar of rational power in a world gone mad red on, your psychological reclamation begins right now. Abandonment of Truth. Hysterical leftist zombies and their war on psychological safety, written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.